Hello everyone, welcome to today's session where we're going to look at the poem The World is Too Much With Us by William Wordsworth. This poem, The World is Too Much With Us, is a lyrical sonnet which was written in 1806 against the backdrop of Industrial Revolution, but it was published in 1807. The darker sides of Industrial Revolution, capitalism and materialism, and as a result of which everyone was too much engrossed in materialistic pursuits. And seeing this pathetic scenario, Wordsworth felt utterly pained, where people were very much busy in earning and spending money and paying no heed towards the beauties of nature, which can offer them the real joy, which can offer them the real soothing joy to their soul. So, in such a state of mood or mind, Wordsworth penned this poem, The World is Too Much With Us, where he says, The world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. So here the world means ambitious pursuits of man for acquiring wealth and materialistic pleasures. So here Wordsworth is saying that the world is too much with us. We are so much engrossed in acquiring materialistic gains that later or sooner in this mad race of getting and spending, we are going to end up in a very exhaustive state where we will lay waste, where we will waste our all the spiritual powers, our all the capabilities or capacities to appreciate the beauties of nature. As he is saying that we are so much occupied in monetary gains that we uh, we will not be able to appreciate, because we will not have attention spare for appreciating the higher things of life. The world is too much with us. We are so much engrossed in this materialistic mad race that later or sooner, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours, and we and this pursuit of materialistic gains have left us in such an exhaustive state that it doesn't allow us to appreciate the beauties of nature, because we are not having our whole energy is being consumed by the materialistic race. Little we see in nature that we can't see, we are unable to see nature that is ours, from where we can get our real joy. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. So here Wordsworth is saying that we have exchanged our finer feelings, our hearts, to buy mean motives, to buy the petty materialistic gains. We have given our hearts, we have sold our hearts to buy those petty materialistic gains, and this is a sordid boon, and this is a very mean, cheap and dirty bargain. Sordid boon means very a dirty and mean bargain, and this why this is a boon which is sordid, because it is the gift of this commercialized civilization. So we have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. It is literally, it is seriously a very dirty and cheap bargain, where we have given ourselves over materialistic pursuits, that we have failed our powers, we are failing in our powers to appreciate the genuine things, the higher things of life. This sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. Here Wordsworth is saying that man has given all of himself in the hands of materialistic pursuits, that he has failed to appreciate, that he doesn't feel inclined to enjoy the scenic beauty of nature. As for example, this sea, he fails to appreciate or recognize the beauty of this sea, which lies open under the moonlight. In other words, this sea, which exposes her vast expanse of water to the silver light of the moon. Even that we can't appreciate, we can't pay heed over there, because we are become so much blind in these all worldly and monetary tasks. The winds that will be howling at all hours and are up gathered now like sleeping flowers, and man is uh, so much engrossed in this capitalism and materialism, that he fails to appreciate even winds that choose to be noisy. Howling means blow noisily, that choose to be noisy, or that make noises during the day time, but become calm. Upgathered means become calm, but become calm or sleep at night, which the winds which choose to make noise at during the daytime but withdraw all the energies during the night time, just like those flowers who close their petals at night time, just like sleeping flowers. So this is also, man is also not paying heed, or he these things, he fails to notice these beautiful aspects of nature. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. Out of tune means we have become unresponsive, we are unaffected, it moves us not. We are totally unaffected by these integral part of our surroundings, that whatever no matter how much beautiful or scenic it is, or how much joyful it is to our soul, we have, due to this industrial revolution, materialism, commercialization, and capitalism, we have become so much unmoved and unresponsive to these uh, integral things for our life, these beautiful things of our life. It moves us not. Our mind is totally unaffected by these beautiful aspects or beautiful things or similar beauties of nature. So here, if you have noticed, then we have completed 8 lines up to here, and we have completed octave of this sestet, octave of this sonnet. And I hope that you know, or you are waiting for Volta here, and you're right, because just after the 8 lines, in a very typical sonnet, as this is a Petrarchan sonnet, and in a very typical sonnet, just after the octave we get a turn of thought, a turn in thought, mood, or in mood, as octave proposes or offers problem, dilemma, conflict, which we can witness in these 8 lines. And in the sestet, usually we find the resolution or solution of that dilemma or conflict, and we hope that in this coming sestet we are going to get the same. So let's begin our reading. So after this turn, which we call volta, we are going to start the sestet now. Great God, I would rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. Here, poet is saying, Wordsworth is saying, that his love for nature is such that he would rather prefer to be a pagan in order to appreciate the beauties, in order to sustain his sensibilities. He would prefer to be a pagan or heathen who is brought up in creed, in such an ancient religion which is outworn, which is obsolete or outdated. And then too, he would prefer to be a part of that outdated religion, and he prefers himself to be called heathen. Pagan is a follower of faith of this faith is of the Greece, ancient Greece and Rome, which flourished before the spread of Christianity. So here he is addressing to the God, possibly Christian God, that I would prefer to be a pagan or heathen though I know that this creed is outworn, this is outdated, but then too, because being a pagan or like a heathen, he would be able to, then he would be able to appreciate, he would be able to see the glimpses of gods in the in his natural surroundings. Next lines. So might I, standing on this pleasantly, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. So, like a heathen, while standing on this beautifully means grassland, I would be able to have such glimpses, like I can have the feeling of the presence of God, as pagan are the believer of living nature, living godly nature. So in just like in a league of pagan in or heathen, he would have glimpse of goats in his natural surroundings, and which can help him to make him to reduce or to remove his sense of loneliness. Forlorn means loneliness, because he is feeling so lonely, as he is a great lover of nature, and people are becoming so insensible towards these beautiful aspects or these sensibilities, these natural sensibilities. So he was feeling very forlorn or lonely. So that's why he would prefer to be a heathen, in order to feel the presence of gods in the in his natural surroundings, so that he can keep his sensibilities intact, his natural human sensibilities intact, just in the contrast of machinery, which the people have become after the industrial revolution. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So when he will uh, be a follower like pagan or like a heathen, he would like to see, or he would see the Proteus rising from the sea, and he would hear Triton blowing his wreathed means twisted horn, seashell or conch. So he would see Proteus, and he would hear Triton, as heathen, as a believer of paganism. Here, Proteus and Triton are the mythical character which have been taken from Greek mythology. Proteus is a sea god who can predict the future, and who can also change his shape at will. So he would love to see Proteus rising from the sea. In other words, he would love to see the different shapes of the sea assumed by sea, like Proteus. And he would love to hear Triton. Triton is a prince, half man, half fish, who lives in the depths of the sea. And his special quality is that he has a conch, or a twisted seashell, which he blows violently. When he blows this seashell violently, then the waves rise. And when he blows this conch, or this horn, this twisted horn, calmly or gently, then the waves become calm. So in this way, he can change the he can affect the rise and fall of waves. So in other words, Wordsworth would like to or love to see the music, hear the music. In the Triton's case, he would love to hear the music produced by the rise and fall of waves. And in the case of Proteus, he would love to see the different shapes of the sea. So this is what Wordsworth wants to convey through this poem, The World is Too Much with Us. So now let's have a brief look or brief discussion over the form, structure and stylistic devices in this poem. As I hope that you have guessed, that this poem is a typical Petrarchan or Italian sonnet, divided into octave and sestet, and also composed in a typical rhyme scheme and typical rhythmic pattern, iambic pentameter. So as you can see that the rhyme scheme of octave is A B B A A B B A, and the sestet is composed in this rhyme scheme C D C D C D. and there is iambic pentameter in every line. So this is a typical Italian or Petrarchan sonnet, and there is also use of enjambment. Enjambment is a literary technique where the statement is carried over to the next line without any pause, and this technique we can see in this ninth line, where after rather be there is no punctuation mark, and this line is just continued in the 10th line without any pause. So there is a glimpse of enjambment we have. And then if we see the stylistic devices or literary devices of this poem, then there is personification, and personification, as you know, it is a literary device where an inanimate object or idea is given human-like qualities. So in these three lines, sea, wind, and flowers are endowed with human-like qualities, like sea is baring her bosom, wind is howling, and flowers are sleeping. Allusion. Allusion is a direct or indirect reference to any person, place, thing, or idea. So in these two lines we have allusion to these mythical characters. These are allusions to Greek mythology, Proteus and Triton. Next, simile. Simile is a figure of speech where one thing is compared to another by the use of like or as, and in this example, wind is compared to sleeping flowers. And then at the last we have consonance and assonance, and in prosody the repetition of the consonant sound is called consonance. As in this first statement, there is a repetition of S sound, and if I read it, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea. And in the second line, if we see its first half, then there is a repetition of F sound, for this, for everything. And in the second half, we have the repetition of T sound, we are out of tune. And then there is assonance. Assonance is a repetition of identical vowel sound. As in this statement, if I read it, there is a repetition of O sound, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So this is what the stylistic analysis of this poem, and I look forward to see you in the next session. Thank you for now.